Car Wars is a vehicle combat simulation game developed by Steve Jackson Games. It was first published in 1980. Players control armed vehicles in a post-apocalyptic future. Gameplay. In Car Wars, players assume control of one or more cars or other powered vehicle, from motorcycles to semi-trucks. Optional rules include piloting helicopters, ultralights, balloons, boats, submarines and tanks. The vehicles are typically outfitted with weapons, souped-up components, and defensive elements. Within any number of settings, the players then direct their vehicles in combat. The published games use cardstock counters to represent vehicles in a simulated battle upon printed battle maps. While the game rules allow for any scale, most editions of the game were published to use a 1 inch equals 15 feet scale, although the 5th edition switched to 1 inch equals 5 feet. At this larger scale, players can use miniature toy vehicles such as Hot Wheels or Matchbox cars, S-gauge model railroading scenery, or 28mm to 30mm scale wargaming miniatures. Some play at yet other scales by using toys such as Micro Machines, or even 1/25th scale models in the game. Car Wars had many scenarios available, and the system allowed for players to make their own. Common scenarios included making it successfully through a harrowing gauntlet and competition in an arena to win a virtual cash prize with which to upgrade their cars. Many game sessions consist of players taking their cars through many successive arena-style scenarios, upgrading their cars between each round. At the height of the game's popularity, many gaming conventions and gaming clubs sponsored Car Wars tournaments where finalist players could win real-world prizes. Car Wars uses a number of standard 6-sided dice to determine the outcomes of weapon fire, damage and vehicle control during the game. The game is played in turns, where each turn represents 1 second of real time. Each turn was initially divided into 10 phases, then to 5 phases, and finally, in the latest edition, 3 phases. All action in Car Wars is simultaneous. Players do not roll for initiative, which is common in other combat games. Instead, each phase, a vehicle moves a number of inches determined by the vehicle's speed, and players may fire weapons on any phase as long as they have line of sight with a target of their choosing. As part of movement, players may attempt turns and other maneuvers of increasing difficulty. The more maneuvers one attempts in a turn and the more difficult they are, the more likely it is that a player's car will skid or crash. After all phases of movement in combat are resolved, a new turn begins. Typically, a game is over after a few turns, which represents a battle being over in a few seconds of real time. But because every action in the game must be resolved, a typical game takes a few hours to play. While the core of the original Car Wars was a board game, the supplements allowed it to be extended into a larger game with light role-playing elements. Other expansions such as rule additions, mini-scenarios and dual-static products like Auto Duel Champions published in game magazines expanded the game even further. Publication history. Car Wars was first published in a small Ziploc bag format in 1980, and cited Alan Dean Foster's short story, Why Johnny Can't Speed, as a primary inspiration. The game won the Charles S. Roberts Award for Best Science Fiction Board Game of 1981 and was named to the Games Magazine Games 100 list in 1985. As the game became more popular, there were a series of increasingly more expensive and elaborate editions. Car Wars also served as the inspiration for the 1985 video game Auto Duel, published by Origin Systems. Steve Jackson continues to express an interest in developing video games based on the Car Wars concept. The game's popularity waned during the 1990s, and in response to slipping sales, Steve Jackson Games ceased support for Car Wars. The last official Car Wars material for the original game appeared in Pyramid magazine. Auto Duel America, the setting for Car Wars, was developed for role-playing games using Steve Jackson Games' GURPS system. That GURPS World Book has seen 2 editions. A series of expansions for both the GURPS version and board game, the AADA Road Atlas and Survival Guides, were published in the late 1980s and early 1990s. In 2002, Steve Jackson Games released an entirely new version of Car Wars, redesigned for a new audience. It was called version 5.0. The new game's unusual marketing, scattering the game across several redundant products, met with mixed responses, and the game's popularity has continued to wane. The 2002 products are still in print. In October 2009, Steve Jackson Games made the Car Wars Compendium, 2nd edition, available as a PDF from the E23 online store. Car Wars was translated into French by Croc. Car Wars, the card game, was released in 1991, designed by Creda and Charlemagne Limbard and published by Steve Jackson Games. Reviewer Shannon Appel-Klein said, "It's based on a fun concept, blowing the heck out of each other's cars. The box design is appealing, and there's a matching battle cattle game that's compatible. When you actually began reading the rules and playing the game, the product starts to lose its luster." He described the game as having an extremely high random factor and concluded his review stating, "I'm fairly certain there's a damned good game in this box somewhere. It's just not the one described in the rulebook." Main editions. The first 4 editions use a ground scale of 1 inch equals 15 feet. Attribution introduced an air-to-air scale of 1/4 inch equals 15 feet. The 5th edition uses a revised scale of 3 inches equals 15 feet. First edition Car Wars 1981 to 1984 cars, pickups, vans, and motorcycles. Turns have 10 phases. Sunday drivers. Crash City 1982 added pedestrians, a small bus, and rules for buildings. Truck Stop 1983 added full-size buses and semi-trailer trucks. Auto Duel Champions 1983 added helicopters, grasshoppers, and superheroes, introduced an alternative hex-based movement system using 3-inch cars and 1-inch hexes intended for use with role-playing games. This system was not used again in Car Wars, although the scale is the same as Car Wars. 5th edition. Car Wars Reference Screen 1983 added Advanced Collision System. The AADA Vehicle Guide 1983 added trikes and off-road rules. 2nd edition Car Wars Deluxe Edition 1985 combined and refined the various 1st edition rules, adding 10-wheeler trucks. Note: starting in 1990, the Deluxe Edition boxes contained the Car Wars Compendium 2nd edition rulebook rather than the original Deluxe Edition rulebook. Dual Track 1986 added gasoline engines, metal armor, race cars, and chassis and crossbow. The AADA Vehicle Guide, Volume 2 1987 added sedans and campus. Boat Wars 1988-1990 added boats, amphibious cars, and hovercraft. 3rd edition Car Wars Compendium 1989 turns reduced to 5 phases. Control table revised. Compiled all the 2nd edition rules in one place. Refined car movement, based more on the turning key than on a map grid. 4th edition Car Wars Compendium 2nd edition 1990-1996 control table revised again. Revised rules, including race cars, with many updates and refinements. Car Wars Tanks 1990 added wheeled military vehicles, tanks, and really big guns. Aeroduel 1990 aided fixed-wing planes and airships with both civilian and military-grade weapons. Uncle Albert's Catalog from Hell 1992 includes all previously published construction rules, weapons, and equipment, but the only play rules are minor updates to the CWC2E rules. 5th edition Car Wars 5.0 2002 back to just cars, with simplified play rules. Turns reduced to 3 phases. Scale change, with 1 inch equals 5 feet instead of 15 feet. No official construction rules published as of 2011. Update. Although a reverse-engineered unofficial version exists, A re-release of the 4th edition has been released, and includes the auto-creation rules and simplified rules for role-playing. A Kickstarter has also been started to create a 6th edition, similar to the popular Ogre Kickstarter. Background story: Car Wars is set 50 years after the publication dates of the various books. In this alternative future, natural resources are severely depleted and the United States government nationalized oil production. This eventually led to a second American Civil War, ending with the secession of the free oil states, Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. Following famine in various parts of the world, there are limited nuclear exchanges between the USSR and the US, but anti-missile systems limit the resulting damage. After these wars, there are years of worldwide economic crisis, and related global unrest, during which death sports become a popular form of entertainment. It is this post-apocalyptic setting which has drawn comparisons between Car Wars and the Mad Max movies. As things began to recover, the organized sport of autodueling was born as a form of armed demolition derbies. The American Auto Duel Association was formed to sponsor sporting events and up-and-coming autoduelists. In this future, technology has allowed for new vehicle designs, miniaturized weapon systems, and replacements for internal combustion engines. Furthermore, human cloning has made death only a minor setback for autoduelists who can afford the procedure. Car Wars is a game designed for simulating these autoduels between competing players, clubs and organizations. The American Auto Duel Association was a worldwide group of players. It was started by Steve Jackson Games, who supported the club with a quarterly magazine called Auto Duel Quarterly. This contained campaign ideas, vehicles, mock advertisements, and new weapons and accessories, as well as questions and answers. Subscribers would receive a bonus in the form of an extra cutout or cartoon on the protective mailing cover. Local clubs could also pay a yearly membership fee to be considered official. The AADA served as a structured clearinghouse for common rules and guidelines to be followed during official events. World Championships were held each year at the Origins Game Fair. The AADA is no longer an official club as recognized by Steve Jackson Games. There are still several local clubs that claim to be AADA affiliated, and there are even websites where interested parties can enjoy PBEN games. One site has a Car Wars podcast. The official Car Wars site notes plans to relaunch the AADA and start a new periodical called Auto Duel Times. No date is given for this project. Other products. In addition to the spin-off video game, Epic Comics published Car Warriors, a 1991 4-issue comic book miniseries set in the Car Wars world. There were also a series of 6 game books based in the Car Wars universe, where a player could make choices for the protagonist to affect the outcome of the story. The Car Wars adventure game books were titled Battle Road, Fuel's Gold, Dual Track, Badlands Run, Green Circle Blues and Mean Streets. A trilogy of novels was published by Tor Books. The Square Deal by David Drake in 1992, Double Jeopardy! Car Warriors 2 by Aaron Alston in 1994, and Back from Hell by McFarlane in 1999. In 1995, Victormax Technologies announced plans for a series of gaming centers based on Car Wars, with a prototype site to debut in Chicago in 1996.